So the intent of today's video is fourfold, to cover 4 different topics, but it should be a fairly quick video. I'm trying to stay out of the sun. The sun's starting to set, so trying to keep the glare down and the side will be on. So it's fourfold. The one I want to discuss is the doghouse removal on an M923A1 of the 939 series. The doghouse is still a lot of work to remove, but I think it's worth it in the long run, and I've got some suggestions for other folks if you want to go this route for some possibilities to make it easier that I'm going to try. The other one is installation of the Ken Spencer dual fuel filter upgrade and removing the existing canister style. The one on here that I have probably hasn't been changed since this was overhauled in 05 by the military, and that's 20 years ago. And the other one is the Ken Spencer dual fuel line upgrade. And the last thing I want to accomplish in this video is filling and purging the air out of the entire empty system. I've got an idea I want to try, and we're going to try it. I haven't tried it yet, so we will find out. So first things first, this is the old canister right here. That's not rust scale in there. That is the actual just debris that came out, and you can see it all on the filter. That's the diesel that came out of the filter. I drove this truck home from New Jersey. I am astonished that it even made it from New Jersey. I was going to change it when I was to change the filter before we left, but I was fearful that if I mess with it, and it was in the around the middle of December, if I mess with it, am I going to open up a problem to have on the road? So I said, you know what, let's just run this and go with it. So you can only imagine how much sediment's on the bottom when I dumped this fuel out, just to get an idea of how much sludge was in there. So first things first, there's really no information out there on the doghouse removal. So I found, to get it done, I had to take the seat out, but I'm planning on replacing with an air ride seat anyways, so I wasn't overly brokenhearted. I had to take the floor mat out. I had to take the accelerator pedal off. That is held on with some 1032 Phillips head screws, or bolts, or screws. I was kind of shocked that they even came out. The heads were a little stripped. I was able to work them out and get them out without breaking them, so I can reuse those. I'm going to switch over to some bolts, so there's something you can get a head on down the road. I'm going to sand this whole floor down with a wire wheel, or wire wheel it down. Only a couple little spots. I have a little bit of rot holes in there. I'm going to hit it with a wire wheel and hit it with a rust neutralizer, and then I'm going to put several coats of POR 15 on here, and then eventually I will put the interior floor back in. I'm planning on painting this truck from the sand color over to back to the original green camo that it was. That'll be hopefully later this year. But I'm also working on the brakes. I have that going on. I've been waiting on the return springs to wrap up these brakes. This rear axle has no shoes on it at all, so the shoes finally came in for that, so I can start to button all this up and get this truck ready to get on the road. So, and here we are. So the doghouse is held on with 16 bolts. There's 4 across the top, which you have to take the entire dash a half apart. I had to remove the outside air damper so that it could slide over. I had to remove the key switch, or I have upgraded to a key switch, but your start, and then I also had to remove the ignition switch. So there's 4 3/8 bolts. That's all the hardware there. There's 4 across the very top. I had to remove the driver's side floor ducting that had to come out, that goes into the side right there, so you can get your arms up in there. There's insulation just packed up in there. I had to pull that back. The floor obviously had to come out, or the floor matting had to come out because that's over the bolts. There's 2 bolts behind the side here on each side. Then there's 2 bolts on the slope on each side. Then there's 4 bolts on the bottom. So that makes your 16 3/8 fine thread bolts that are there. What I'm going to do is in the engine compartment, you can see, hopefully you can see, there's weld nuts. There's weld nuts that are on there that you run your bolts through from the inside. I don't know what an engineer was thinking, why he thought that was a good idea. My plan is I'm going to grind off those nuts, and I'm going to, on the two on the floor on each side, so those 4, the 2 on the back wall, and then the 4 on the top, so basically 12 of the 16, everything less the floor. I'm going to grind those weld nuts off of the body, and I'm going to get new ones and weld them onto the doghouse, because there's ample room to run bolts in from the outside in. This way you don't have to fight. That insulation is stuck on so tight, and it's so rigid to try to bend it. And of course you don't want to wreck it, because you want to be able to hopefully salvage it and not ruin it. In the corners, I had to make a couple slits up in the very corner so I could peel it back just to access those bolts where it made a wrap around the corner. But I think that'll be a lot easier. Then on the doghouse where it's on the floor, I'll just make some notches in the flooring or cut that back. I mean, it shouldn't take you, it took me 6 hours to get this doghouse off. And I know guys say they hole sawed through the back or sawzalled through the back. I really didn't want to do that. Part of that time, I mean, I could probably do it faster now, but part of that time was just trying to find a way to avoid spending all that time. And kept trying to see, is there another way to do this? It should not be this hard. Either here nor there. That's my plan with the doghouse. I'll do another video follow-up on that later on how that goes. But I think that'll be a lot easier, because down the road, I'm looking at potentially putting a turbo on this. I want to talk to another fellow on YouTube, M923A1 is his YouTube name. I'd love to find out what he did and get some more particulars on his turbo and his radiator swap and intercooler, I believe, that he put in there, just to understand what I'm getting into. But I also would like to do Jake's on here. So you really need this. I mean, I had to face it sooner or later, so I figured let's just do it now and be good. But as you can see, you're taking a lot apart to get all of this stuff out and in there. So the second part is the Ken Spencer fuel upgrade, the dual fuel upgrade. So as you can see, that's the tap that has to, where it goes into, and it's the lower bolt right there. I'm sorry, the lower plug. That is your supply line of the rail. The upper left one that you see in this picture, that is a return. So that's where that goes. The only thing, I made some changes to his kit. Is what I did is I had some hose protectors, so I put that on there just so it was protected. It was from rubbing or anything like that. Some little mods that I did along the way to his kit. His kit's great, comes with everything you need. I just suggest some of these things. Some of them is just my own neuroticness that I wanted it a certain way. Here's the new front end line. Hopefully you can see it okay. The sun's pretty bad out here right now. And that's where that goes in there. It's a challenge. There's this coolant line, there's a strap on that, and I tried to get the bolt out. I couldn't, because it's running into the strap for this. This is kind of rusty, so I'm like, I don't want to tear and break it. So I ended up just cutting the copper tubing on both sides of the original fuel line, and I have that out. I was able to wheedle it out of there. So over on this side, I went a little crazy over here. So here's his line coming back around, and it ties into the T that you get. And then this other one comes out and comes around and goes to the front of the engine motor. So I also wanted to have a gauge on here. So I have a 300 PSI gauge. I wanted one here, and I'm planning on putting one inside of the cab. So what I did is I came off here. That's an inverted flare fitting that comes with his kit that goes up, and then I got this T here. Then I teed into another T. It comes out to the gauge, and I put a plug on there, so then I can continue on with a piece of 1/4 inch once I get things more situated. And then that goes to this is the right here. This is the rear headline, and that's the front headline right there. So just some stuff I did. I spent more on all these crazy fittings to make all this work than the kit cost, but I think it's just having gauges, having information is great. It's great that you can reuse your existing fuel shutoff. So if anything catastrophic ever happened while you're in the cab, you can pull it back. So then going down here onto his line, because I made some changes, I had to add some fittings on. So we're gonna go starting at the fuel tank and work our way back so I can explain what all this is here. So here at the fuel tank, this is the new line where it comes off. Same thing, I put hose protector over it. It doesn't come with his kit, but you can pick it up cheap enough to put it on. I want to get the old line either stripped out or cut back and removed. I hate leaving abandoned things on vehicles. Being an electrician, I hate leaving abandoned wiring places without at least identifying what it is and what it's for, so down the road someone isn't wondering what's what. So that comes off of there real easy, and then that came over. I ran it behind up in the frame rail, and then I got a little wild here. So I'm coming in here, that's the line from the fuel tank on top. I wanted to have valves on there. There's no valves that come with the kit. You just bring your line. He's got a 90 that comes into here, that is a straight O-ring to a JIC fitting. So I added all this on because my idea is when I change these filters out here, my water separator filter, then my regular filter, I can shut these valves off. This way I don't have to worry about any drain back to the tank, fill my filters, and then put them in and have very, very minimal chance of error. And I don't have to go through major purging processes to bleed out the air. At least I don't think I'll have to. But if I do, it shouldn't be that bad with what I'm going to attempt. So then I came out, I put a valve in there, then I put a 90, so I didn't use all his fittings. Going into, so that's a 1/2 inch male thread to JIC fitting into his hose, once again wrapped with the hose protector. And those are the filters that I used right there. Then I come up here and I came into here. Well, because I didn't go into the filters the same way he had measured, I ended up with too much slack in the hose. So I wanted to make sure this was a gentle enough bend where I didn't have to worry about having kinking the hose, obviously. And I didn't want to trim this if I didn't have to try to reuse this fitting. I don't know if it's even reusable. I would think if I was able to cut the hose off without putting a gouge in the barbing, I should be able to reuse it. But that's why I got this 45 right here that is a female by male, and then it just made that turn in there far more gentle into there. So here is the primer right here. I tried using it just to see if it even works. It draws no vacuum in it. Probably the O-rings are shot, but I hear these things just don't work in general. So I removed that. So it's what they did, and I can't believe Cummins does this. Coming off of here is like a 1/4 inch line that comes down, and it actually went into a 90 into the side of this 90 that they drilled and tapped. It kind of astonishes me that Cummins didn't have an actual fitting for this, that they just drilled and tapped into there. So what I did is I adapted from the 1/8 inch pipe thread over to 1/4, and then I put a valve here, and then I can put a plug in here for the great majority of the time. But my idea is, and my hope is that I can put an evacuator on here, and I can actually suck all the fuel through the filters. No sense purging the fuel because I still have air behind it, and I would just be sucking the fuel right back out of there that's in there. So my idea is I can use an extractor and extract airless fuel right up to this point, then shut this off. And then I know I'm solid to fuel here. Then my thought is to put the same extractor over here on the return line, right here on this return, while cranking the engine to allow it to pull the fuel the rest of the way through the pump, through all the return lines, right back here, that's the return line, and then back to the tank. This way I can purge any air in there and get at least the rail charged with fuel. That's my hope. We'll see how that works. But let's try this right now. I got I just got a cheapy Harbor Freight evacuator right here. So I'm going to charge that up, and we're going to give that a shot and see if that will pull a vacuum up into, to pull the fuel up here. Okay, so this here is just a piece of 5/8 hose. It's just clear. I just wanted it clear so I can see when the fuel is coming out clean. Like I said, I don't see why there would be air. So I'm going to open this valve to open to the system. Got a lot of suction. I'm sucking that hose right down. I hear air coming through the filters. And I got fuel flow. Okay, so that worked. It pulled it right down. You might want to come up with a better idea of a hose, because this sucked this hose completely flat. So I believe that worked. We should be air free on our fuel there now. And the fuel is nice and clean. I was worried that was the condition of the fuel, how it was looking in the when I dumped it out of the original filter. Close that off, and we should be air-free fuel to this point. Fuel filter should be full. I'm going to pull this fitting out. I have a plug that's going to go in there, and this way 99% of the time it'll remain plugged and sealed. But way better than this option. Of course, if you're on the side of the road and don't have a way to pull a vacuum, it doesn't do you much good. They got those, Harbor Freight has those pump units that you can grab. They're like $140. The manual pump ones may not be a bad idea if you're going on a road trip to have spare filters and maybe have that and just pump it manually. I just happen to have this here from when I was working on my skid steer, this extractor I used to suck the old fuel tank out. But I believe this worked. So now it's just a matter of doing it on the return side, which I'll do in a separate video, just because I'm not ready for that today. But I hope this helps. This is a good potential way to do this and save a lot of headaches. Like I said, you can see those nuts right there. Crawl up a little bit here. So all those bolts are accessible, that you have to fight from the inside to get out, to fight the insulation up, and they're all readily accessible right there. And even down here. Kind of hard to see them, but there's one. And there's the other right there. So I think that'll work so much better. The other option is to put studs on there and weld those on, but I think having the captured nuts in there will be better, is a better option. And this is just the fuel system from the other angle. There's the key switch I did. I switched over to a key switch. I used the key switch from, I think it's Big Mike's, and it didn't last. I broke it because I put the wrong key in by accident. I had a master lock for locking the steering wheel, and I had that key along with the key. The key that came, or the lock set that came with it, or the ignition switch that came on that kit of his, was something like for a boat or something, and it had a really tiny key on there. I accidentally stuck the master key in there. I cranked it over. It broke the switch, so the truck wouldn't stop cranking. So I had to do some quick work to get that disconnected. So I switched over. That is a ignition switch for a Cat skid steer, a Cat 277B to be exact. It's not a cheap switch. That switch was $150. But I will tell you what, it is built like a tank. It's a type of switch that you would think, with a type of key that you would think would belong in a truck of this girth. So all I did is I just took the pigtails that came on his switch kit and I just transferred them over. I figured out the wiring configuration and I got that all up in there. But yeah, this is all the stuff. Sorry about the sun. This is all the stuff that has to be disconnected to get into this. It's just so much better. Hopefully the other way. My other hope is some point I would like to put a winch on here. So I also knew I would need to have accessibility for that reason. I know Ken Spencer, I believe in one of his videos he mentioned he took the Doghouse off because he was planning on doing a winch. I'd love to know what he did and what he ran into, just so I can see it. You know, sometimes seeing the steps or the stages that you have to go through just saves so much time of having to just guess and tear things apart and keep running to the TMs, looking at a parts manual, say, well, how does this go together? Looking at exploded views. So that's that. I'm gonna leave the plunger here. I'm just gonna take off the old feed fitting here, or well, the top side that went to the injector, and I'm gonna take that off. I'm just gonna cap it, but I'll leave this on here. It's original to the truck. Might as well leave it. Maybe the next owner, who knows, might want to put it back. I was going to rebuild it, but it just didn't make sense. And I think he'd be pumping a lot of pumps to do what this extractor just did in a matter of seconds. Like I said, I'm very impressed with it, very pleased with it. Ken makes a really good kit. He did a lot of R&D. I've spent a lot of time running back and forth between the hydraulic fitting store, adding all these additional fittings on, trying to find what's going to work, then coming here and putting it on and finding out I had this in the way and that in the way. I was running into the compressor inlet air right here today, but I was able to find the right angle to get everything to work. So it's not easy. So his kit's really slick because it comes with everything you need. I will post a list of all of the parts and pieces I used on here, all the additional parts and pieces to make all of this work by adding the additional valving on. I mean, if it's something you want to do, these ball valves here are just from Lowe's. They're just regular, they're heavy duty threaded ball valves. They're like $22 a piece, where the cheap ones or the basic ones are like 11. I figured, you know what? I'm not gonna cut corners on this, but it's, to me, it gives you more options and it allows you to not have to do so much purging. I don't like the fact that we had to do so many fittings to get from here to here, but it was all that they had at the hose store to make all this stuff work. So it is what it is. So I hope this helps anybody on all four of these topics. But the big thing was a Doghouse. When I saw there was very minimal. I only saw on one of the Steel Soldiers, there was somebody who someone had asked about, hey, how do you get the Doghouse off? And his exact comment was something along the lines of, hey, I'm 16, and if I could figure out how to get it off, you can too. It's good to give help, and even just like, hey, plan on it being all day. Plan on it taking you 5 hours. Plan on taking everything apart you didn't want to take apart. Would at least help, because it's like I sat here for quite a bit of time saying this can't be the way you got to get this off, that you've got to take so much stuff off and fight your way through all this stuff. I must be missing something. But apparently that's just how it's done. So hopefully this is helpful. One more thing I want to add to this. I'm planning on, like I said, I'm planning on painting the truck back to the original camo. And I've been all over the place. I've been looking on all the forums and seeing what people are doing, and the battle of using behr paint from Home Depot and all of that. So I'm not a huge fan of the idea of using a residential outdoor paint for a vehicle, but hey, you never know. So I tried 3 different paints. The Home Depot behr paint I don't have out here. I did testing. This is the Sherwin-Williams Pro Industrial Paint, a DTM paint. I took the behr paint that I found. It's I think it's 34033 is the paint color. I could be wrong, but it's the 383 green color. I was able to find that in Home Depot's color. Well, Home Depot was able to find the color through their computer. I painted that on a sample chip, and then I had Sherwin-Williams color match it. They were not able to find it in the system. Only problem is with their DTM, which to me seems like it's a heavier duty paint, still latex, but a heavier duty paint than the Behr paint. This is only available in eggshell. It's eggshell or gloss, which eggshell is not the gloss or sheen of this vehicle is supposed to be. But if anybody's interested, this is the, sorry, the camera's shaky. This is the colorant for there. The military green is not a standard color. It's just what the guy named it there. So that's that. Then I also purchased the Gillespie coatings from Rapco. Talked to that guy. He's a great guy over there. It was great talking, just kind of throwing back stuff about different vehicles and winches and everything. Really helpful. So I got this here just to give this a shot as well, because this is, I'm not exactly sure its exact base of it, but it's more of an industrial coating versus these, you know, they call it industrial, but to me, anything that's latex, I get worried about that. And I know the new Kark paint comes as latex, but to me, if you got to wear a respirator to put it on, it's probably better. I'm sure I'm wrong, but that's the way my thinking is. So I got this paint here, and we'll do a little sample chips here. I painted on. So this here is the Pro Industrial Latex from Sherwin-Williams. I painted this on 626. This right here was painted, this is the Behr from Home Depot. I painted this on 623. And this right here is the Rapco Gillespie 383 green. There's a little bit of a sheen to it, and maybe it wasn't mixed 100% right, because I just wanted to do a quick test. Each one of these are just 2 coats. And this was done today, 7:15. So I'm not sure how well this will show up, but here on this, if I take my fingernail and I do that, you don't see it as much. Now, I don't know with the glare if it'll show up or me in the shadows, but you can see your fingernail marks in there. And you come over here, and you can see that fingernail mark right there. You can peel the paint. Now, I know they say it takes 30 days to be dry. I'm just saying. This is, you're looking at almost 3 weeks right here. So this is the Sherwin-Williams Pro Industrial. You can see there, you can see fingernail marks in there. And you can see I'm able to chip the paint. Same thing. This is about a few days less than the other one, so 2.5 weeks maybe from today. And you're still able to see fingernail scuffs in it, and you're still able to chip the paint. This feels very soft and latexy. Same thing. I know they say 30 days to full cure, which I'm going to try it and see what it's like. This is the Rapco Gillespie right here. This was painted, like I said, it was painted today. Sorry, I marked 7/18 by accident. Today is the 15th I'm recording this, so I corrected the date. So this was painted this morning. Right now it's about 6 o'clock at night. Why the sun's right on my back. And this was painted this morning at about 10 o'clock. So this might be 8 hours old, this paint. And you can see I'm not getting any marking on there. And trying to chip it, it's a very thick, heavy coating. And of course, they say this is 24-hour to full cure, at least the way I understood the instructions. So yeah, there's soft parts in there, but I think this is going to be a far better coating. Now, how fast do they fade out? That's anybody's guess. I guess all paint's going to fade. That's why you repaint your house, because the paint's faded. So my money is on this one right here. This is the most expensive paint. This is $55, plus it was $30 shipping, because it's hazmat to be shipped to me from Georgia, and I'm up in Western New York. Hopefully when I get more of this paint, hopefully multiples cost a little bit less on the freight, because they could be shipped, you know, in batches together. This paint here isn't far behind, Buying it local, of course, if you want to get the ultra premium or whatever Behr's top of the line is, Excalibur or whatever it is, I think you're looking at 60 plus now a gallon for this. And this right here, the Sherwin Williams paint, today's price was, I believe it was like $55 for a gallon of this. So all said and done, I don't think this paint from Gillespie or Rapco is that far off, and already seeing the durability in it. Now, of course, you see a lot of paint marks. Like I said, I brushed this on and I brushed it heavy. So my money's on this. This is what I'm going to go with here now. So just another little review as part of this. Cover a lot of different topics in a short little video. Hopefully I'm keeping it under a half an hour. And hopefully you can see a lot, and it helps any decisions that you're looking at making, whichever way you're looking to go. Have a great day. Here's a screenshot of 7 different invoices that were for the parts that I used. As the ones with the red lines in them, those were ones that were returns. As you can see, there were a lot of returns as I was trying to R&D through what was needed to build up this building. But if it's something you want to do and just extract out the parts that are not drawn with a red line through there, that would give the exact part list of what I used. So hopefully that helps.